Welcome to part 2 of programming an Air native extension with Flash Builder and Eclipse. I'm your host, Nick Kwiatkowski. This video is going to assume that you've already watched part 1 in setting up your environment for creating an Air native extension for Windows using Eclipse and the CDT environment. The first couple things we're going to be talking about in this video include setting up the proper includes within your DLL, declaring your public interfaces, programming the required functions, and programming a sample function to return data to Air. Essentially, this part of the video is going to create your DLL file, which you'll later on package into the actual A&E file and your library file that will be used within a Flash Builder. The next video after that will be showing how you consume that A&E file into your actual Air application. So let's begin. We've left off from our last video where we created a sample header file and a C++ file. These are currently empty applications, or empty files, which we're going to populate with pretty much everything we need for our A&E. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our includes. We're going to start with our header file, and in the middle of the file we're going to go create a couple spaces here, and we're going to make sure we include our flash runtime extensions.h file. This is the file that earlier we copied into our Project Explorer and will become a part of our application. Again, the .h file, we removed the Win32 section so that we're always including the standard the std inh or int.h file. So start off by doing include, and we're going to say flash runtime extensions.h. Now this right here will include this file that is currently in the base or the root of our project. If you've moved it somewhere else, make sure you update the properties or the file name properly. We're going to go do a quick comment here, import the Adobe headers so we can program our A&E. So now we've included this, and we're going to have a little error message here saying that it doesn't know exactly what's going on. But that's okay. We're now going to go into our actual C++ program, or our C application, and we're going to include that exact same file. So we're going to go include flash runtime extensions.h. Flash extensions. Helps if I spell that properly. There we go. A couple other things that we're going to have to include are the stdlib.h, so that we have access to all the standard libraries. And we're also going to want to include our header file as well. Include sample ane.h. This will link our header file with our main application file. The next thing we're going to want to do is declare our public interfaces. So in order for the A&E, essentially Flash to connect into our A&E, into our DLL, we have to export two functions so it can access it. This is essentially the same as creating public functions when you're working within Flash or within Flex. So essentially what this is doing is you are creating a way that the Flash runtime can dip into this DLL, and then you have access to those two functions. The two functions by the documentation of Adobe you need to have an initializer and a finalizer. Now I've created a set of snippets so that I don't have to type these in every time, because every A&E I'm doing have the exact same two functions. You only need these two functions. You can export other functions if you wish, but you must have these two functions. So these are the functions as they are right now. I'm going to go into them in just a little bit of depth here. So we have del DECL spec DLL export. This essentially says that tells the compiler that we want to export the this particular function that will exist in our C file as something that we want exported in our DLL. So DLL, in the header file of the DLL, the Flash player can find it. It's not going to return any type. It's going to be of type initial. The name is going to be initializer, and we're going to take in ext data and then a bunch of other stuff that is required by the Flash player. We do the same thing for the finalizer as well. So the finalizer is essentially going to be our destructor when Air no longer needs or feels that it no longer needs our DLL file. This function will be called when essentially you have the opportunity to clean stuff up. So you can do, let's say, close files, close COM ports, do really whatever you need to do to clean up so that you're not leaving open hooks all over the place, and so everything can be properly garbage collected. So pretty much our header file is now complete. These are the only two functions that we need to let the world know that we have. Everything else is going to be internal within our C application. These particular, the ext data, the FRE context initializer, and the finalizer. We're going to get into a little more depth here, but this is the signature that is required in order for the Flash player to work with this DLL file. It cannot be any different. So let's go into our C application, and we're going to go set up essentially the two functions that are required, the initializer and then the finalizer. So again, I have a snippet set up because these functions are pretty much always the same. So here we go, and we have the initializer, which again takes in the ext data. This would be any data that we can seed our DLL file with. We then have an initializer, which comes in as a pointer, and then we have a finalizer that comes in as a pointer. So what this particular function is going to do is we are going to set that pointer to the dereferenced, essentially the dereferenced pointer to the initializer and then the finalizer. Let's leave it at that. So you've got the context initializer, which is essentially going to initialize the context. Essentially, it sets up everything within the context. And then we've got the finalizer. So when the DLL is initially created, it's going to call this initializer function. And then we're going to pass in, and we're going to tell it in memory how to get to this the context initializer, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, and how to get to in memory, how to get to the context finalizer. And then we have our finalizer our finalizer function. The finalizer function is a function which again returns nothing, or it returns nothing, and it is called when the DLL is destroyed in memory. So I don't really have to do for this sample application or this sample DLL. I don't have to do any cleanup really because I'm not really opening any files or doing anything fancy like that. If I was really worried about that, that's something that I would have to take care of. So the context initializer, again, has a particular signature that we have to follow. It has, again, the ext data, which is the data that will seed that function. We have the CTX type, which is a parameter when you create the context within the ANE file. And we'll get into that I believe it's the third portion of the video series here. And then we're going to have the FRE context, which is the context itself, the number of functions that we're expecting, and then that we're essentially passing back. And then we have a number of, and then we're actually going to pass back references of the functions themselves. So in my snippet that I have here, I essentially I'm going to be setting up the ability for Flash or Air to call into two particular functions. One that I always have is called isSupported, and then I'm going to pass back some data with that, and then the other one that I have set up here would be function A. If I, let's say, needed to have 5 functions, or let's just say, for example, 3 functions that I'm going to be calling into, I can change the number of functions. I can say get test string is one of the functions I'm going to be passing back. This is essentially, I'm setting up an array of these guys here. So name equals constant. I'm passing back a string. And it's going to be named, the third function I'm going to be using, let's say, get hello world. Pardon my typing here. Function data equals null. And function equals the reference pointer to another function that I'm going to be doing. So let's say get hello world. And we'll update this first one here to say get test string. So you'll notice when I hit save on here, I have 3 errors right now. I've got an error that's saying that the symbol, or essentially the pointer to get test string, which is the function I'm going to be having, can't be found, is supported, can't be found, and get hello world can't be found. That is something that we are going to be programming here in just a moment. So one of the things I am going to include here as well is the string library, because I will need that. By the way, if you need additional libraries, please feel free to add them in. String.h, so I can deal with simple strings and things like that, not have to worry about getting all the stuff. So when the context is initialized, and by the way, I can actually have multiple contexts within a DLL. So if let's say, for example, I have a DLL that worries about, let's just say, worries about getting contacts from Outlook. I can have a person, I could have a group as different contexts, and then those can do different things, but I can still have them encapsulated within the same DLL. That allows me to make essentially like 2 DLLs that do the same thing. I mistyped this over here. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function that is for the get is supported. Now Adobe recommends that every A&E has, and every A&E context has a get supported function. So again, I've got a snippet over here that helps with my signature, so I get the signature properly. Obviously, I don't want my function as the name. I'm going to have is supported. Now, is supported, there we go. So you'll notice right away that the error for the pointer, the dereference pointer to is supported now goes away. So essentially what's going to happen is, what happens is I'm actually passing the memory space for this function here, or for, let's say, is supported back to air, so it knows how to call these things directly and not necessarily by name. Again, I have a particular signature that I'm required to have. Function data is one of the options. The context that is passed back to me, and then a set of arguments. The set of arguments would be an array of every argument that I send in from air to here. So I can say, for example, if I want to get contacts by name, I can pass in a string that is, the search string or something similar to that. That's not necessarily what I'm going to be doing right now, but I am going to set up my is supported. So, for example, I can go and I'm going to say pass back true for is supported anytime that I call this. So I'm going to do a very quick uint32t is supported in this OS equals 1. 1, of course, means true, 0 means false. And then I'm going to do FRE new object from bool. And actually, let me show you code completion from this as well. So because I'm passing this in essentially from a boolean, I'm going to say is supported in this OS because I've already set that to 1. That should be true. And then I have to pass back this result. So earlier I've already set up a a new object with the name of result. I set up another new object that says is supported in this OS equals 1, which in my case is true, or which means true, and then essentially I'm going to stuff the result, or the is supported in this OS, which is true, into that result as a new object, and then pass that back to error. So essentially what that does is it creates an object that error knows how to deal with, so ActionScript knows how to deal with. That's what that FRE object. So think of that as just an object with an error. You create one in memory, you work with a whole bunch of stuff within C, and then you essentially cast the C object type into the object type from error in ActionScript, and then you pass that back. So in error, if I call the is supported, I'm going to get back true. That's what this function does. I'm going to set up 2 more functions here to take care of the other 2 functions that I've already set. So get test string and then get hello world. Again, I'm going to just double click so I can get my function, or my snippet here, so I can get the signature properly. So I'm going to say get test string, and I'm going to do another one here, get hello world. You will notice that I have these functions first and not last. Order that you declare functions is important in C. In case you forget about that, you'll get weird error messages if you move those functions in the back because they haven't already been addressed in memory by the time that we have these functions set up. So the order of these functions is pretty important, but you'll get error messages to that effect if you don't put them in the right format. So I'm going to set up just a really quick string here to send back test, and then another one for hello world. I'm going to say const char type string, or with a name string, equals this is a test string from A and E. And then I'm going to do FRE new object from UTF-8, which essentially is a string, and I have to first pass back the length of that string. I'm going to do str_len to find out what the length of that string is. str plus 1. So one thing about string length is it will pass back the actual string length, but it won't actually pass back the null terminator of a string. That's a C++ thing. Unless you pass that back, things will get really screwed up. And then I'm going to pass back the string itself. Cast it as a constant u int 8, come on, t type pass back string, and then I'm going to stuff this into result. I'm essentially going to do the exact same thing for my hello world example. I'm just going to copy and paste for sake of time, and so you guys don't have to suffer through watching me program that again. I'm going to update my string here to say hello world. Say hello world, this is your DLL talking. So I'm going to save this file, and our DLL is pretty much done. We should notice that on the left hand side here we no longer have any errors. Again, if I go to the problems tab, I don't have any errors. From here I can go and compile. So I can go to project, build all, and you should see in the console something's not right. Oh, I do have an error. Save that. Let me go build this again. And you should see on the bottom down here that we now have a compiled application. It should have gone through and should be pretty quick for this sample for the sample DLL. But GCC is called, and we get out a file in our debug folder, libsample_ane.dll. If I open this up, you'll see all the header files and all that crap that we that get compiled in here. But most importantly, when you drop the sample ane.o, which is our object file, which ends up becoming our DLL, you'll notice all our function types, or all of the functions that are included within that object. Most important, you've got the finalizer, you've got the initializer. As long as those are in there, you should be all set. Of course, we'll want to create our release version of this DLL as well. The release version, so if we take a look at the actual DLL, I'm going to right-click, go to Properties just to find the file size. You'll notice it's about 60K. That's pretty heavy for this particular DLL because we're not really doing anything in it. That should be around 30K or so, or maybe 40K. Now, this is the debug version. It's got all the debug symbols in it and things like that. We're actually going to go and create our release version as well. So I can go to this little hammer thing over here and change this to release mode, and it's going to go build the release version of this DLL. Drop down, again, I've got my sample, my object file. The sample should now be about 43K or so, which is a lot more reasonable for what we've done. We're of course including the strings, so we're dealing with strings, we're dealing with all the Flash stuff that's in there as well, and that's pretty much it. So this now concludes the video of everything we need to get our actual DLL out of this entire project. And of course, the next project is going to be building our library for Flash Builder, or within Flash Builder. Building the library is going to essentially be the harness that connects our air application to this DLL. So we're going to go do all the programming necessary for that, and then we're going to go and build that into the actual A&E. And then our final video will actually be how do you use this A&E within your project. I'm Nick Kwiatkowski, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.